guys! Today's video is going to be about proportions, and this goes with the learning goal. I can determine whether two ratios form a proportion, and I can solve proportions, and we're just going to be talking about the first part of that today. Okay, so the definition of a proportion is an equation stating that two ratios are equal. So basically, it's just when you have two ratios that you know are equal to each other, those form a proportion. And just to review, a ratio is just when we're comparing two quantities using division. So we have two amounts of something and we're comparing those using division. So I can make a proportion with those if I have two ratios that are equal. And there are different ways that I can compare ratios, and you'll remember this back from the first video that we watched. We can compare ratios using decimals. We can compare ratios by simplifying the ratios and seeing if they simplify this to the same thing. Or we can compare ratios by cross-multiplying. And we're going to learn today that the official name of cross-multiplying is cross products. So when we cross multiply, we're creating cross products, and that makes sense because the word product means the answer to a multiplication problem. So if you cross multiply, you are finding the cross products. And so all of these different ways that we've talked about for comparing ratios will be ways that we can use to figure out whether two ratios form a proportion, because if they're equal, if they're equivalent, then we know that they make a proportion. So let's look at how we could use those different methods for deciding whether or not two ratios form a proportion.
The answer to the free response question for today is flying shoe.
Let's say that Mrs. Spillman and Mrs. Fiordelis both did a survey of their classes. And in my class, 10 out of the 24 students said that they had watched the movie Frozen. And in Mrs. Fiordelis' class, 15 out of her 36 students said that they had watched the movie Frozen. And we want to see, is that the same ratio of students, or does one class have a higher ratio of students than another that have watched the movie Frozen? So if we look back at our methods for comparing ratios, we could use decimals. So we could change those two ratios into decimals. We could also simplify those two ratios and see if they simplify to the same thing. Or we could cross multiply and find the cross products and see if they're the same. And if they are the same, then again, this would be a proportion. These would form a proportion, meaning that they would be two equal ratios. So let's go ahead and just do that for all of these. So the first way would be to change these both to decimals. So if I take both of these and write them in fraction form, I'm going to now divide the top number of the numerator by the bottom number or the denominator and see if they are the same. For the first ratio, we have 10 out of 15. So I'm going to do 10 divided by 15, and that equals 0.666, so 0.6 repeating, which is the same as 2/3. And for the second ratio, I'm going to do 24 divided by 36, and that equals the same thing. And that means that those are a proportion. They do form a proportion. They are two equal ratios. Now we're going to compare these using our two other methods and see that we get the same thing. So the second method is to simplify both ratios and see if you get the same simplified ratio. So I notice that 10 and 15 can both be divided by 5. And so if I divide 10 by 5, I get 2, and if I divide 15 by 5, I get 3. So that simplifies to 2/3. And same thing here. I could divide both of these by 2 or by 4. I'm going to divide them both by 12 because that's the greatest common factor of 24 and 36. And 24 divided by 12 is 2. And 36 divided by 12 is 3. So again, if I simplify these, I can now see that they simplify to the same thing, which means that they are equivalent ratios, which means that they form a proportion. And the last way we can do this is by cross multiplying. So I'm going to move these down a little bit. So we can use cross products. We can find the cross products, and if those are equal, then we know that these will be equivalent ratios. So again, 10 times 36 I can do in my head. That's 360. I'm not able to multiply 15 times 24 in my head, or anyway, not easily. So I'm going to use my calculator. And I can see that that is also 360. I find my cross products are equal, and that means that my two ratios are equal, which means that we have a proportion. Here are your free response and multiple choice questions. So go ahead and answer those, and then have a great day. Thanks. Bye.